Hi, we're the Assemblé String Quartet. I'm Ethan Kahn. I'm a senior at Enloe High School.
I'm Olivia Chen. I'm in ninth grade and I go to Green Hope High School.
I'm Owen Lockett. I'm in 10th grade at Enloe High School.
I'm Rebecca Fuller. I'm 17. I'm a junior and I am homeschooled.
So we arranged Domenico Scarlatti's Ninth Piano Sonata in D minor for our Team Genius project, which was composed in 1738 and is also called the Pastorale. Giuseppe Domenico Scarlatti was an Italian composer from Naples who was alive from 1685 to 1757, mainly in the Baroque era. He wrote 555 sonatas for harpsichord, which were very influential for piano music going into the classical era. Much of Scarlatti's music was influenced by Spanish and Portuguese folk music, in particular the guitar music from those countries. This piece is composed in single movement piano sonata binary form, a form that Scarlatti helped to innovate.
In arranging this piece, we found that there are a lot more difficulties in turning a piano sonata into a string quartet work. What was especially hard was coordinating four people rather than a single person and making the phrasings and connections work. Sometimes there were spots where we would have to add intervals in different parts of the quartet in order to accomplish the same sound, but also make it possible for a string musician to play. For example, sometimes we would add undertones that were a third underneath the melody. More obstacles were found in changing the articulation and abilities of the piano, which we'll talk about later. And we also had trouble with clefs because not all of us can read other clefs, so we usually had to talk it out with each other. While composing, we focused more on getting the notes, rhythms, and intervals down, so we didn't always pay as much attention to the actual playability. And so when we actually got around to playing it, we had to do some last-minute changes. And finally, the technology proved to be a problem for us because Becca and I, it was our first time using these scores, so we had to learn how to use everything.
So something we ran into very early on was that there are things that a piano can do, which a string quartet cannot do, and vice versa. So for example, there was lots of pedal markings, and a string quartet doesn't have pedals. So what we did do is we played with certain techniques that are available to stringed instruments and with dynamics to try to replicate some of that. There were also these very long slur markings, which you can't feasibly play on a string instrument because a piano doesn't have a bow. And a pianist generally, I think it's easier for them to coordinate parts and dynamics because it's one person playing it. And of course, a string quartet needs to coordinate too, but it requires a different kind of interpersonal effort to achieve that effect. And then the piano is a chordal instrument. It's much more difficult for stringed instruments to play chords. And so we had to decide how to divide lines amongst four instruments. And sometimes that meant people were playing double stops. Sometimes it meant people weren't playing at all. But of course, there are certain things that a string quartet can do, such as pizzicato and harmonics. And we played with these. And since they aren't marked in the original Scarlatti score, we had some artistic freedom as to where we wanted to insert these. We also had some freedom with bowings and slurs because, again, it was up to us where we put them. And then what we found very interesting, exciting was that we could move lines into different instruments and different registers to change the effect. And we could use that to emphasize dynamics and play with the balance in a way that a piano really can't because there's only two hands.
As it was our first time for all of us to arrange a piece, we struggled a lot at the start. We went to the Arranging 101 workshop that was in February, and that's where we learned the basics to do this project. Some of the things that we mainly learned were how to transcribe and make melodies between instruments. So sometimes the viola will get melody, sometimes cello will get the melody. It really depends where we wanted a melody to go. We learned how to work with thirds, chords, and intervals. We were also experimenting a lot with the use of pizzicato and arco, so plucking the string and using our bow. We played around with a lot of different dynamics because the left hand and the right hand are always going to be different dynamics on the piano, so it makes it even more complicated when there are four people. We were thinking a lot about the interplay within the group, so passing our lines in between parts and coordinating. We also learned how to make changes as we were playing through and rehearsing this, because since we're the arrangers, and it was especially because it was our first time, there were a lot of parts where it looked really cool on the paper, but it was not possible to do on a string instrument. And the last thing that we really learned how to do is we learned how to use MuseScore. I have personally never even heard about MuseScore before this, but I found my way around it. So please enjoy our arrangement of Scarlatti's Piano Sonata K9 in D minor.